There's so many available on the market, it can get a little bit confusing, so we'll have a closer look at them. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies, and I'm going to talk about different kinds of plastic modeling glues or cements. There's so many available on the market, it can get a little bit confusing. So I've got a whole selection of them. I've just got them on the table here, so I'll just change the camera and we'll have a closer look at them. All right, this is a large collection of glues. There's more again, so there's different brands, but what I've worked out is I'll split them up into three major groups. Okay, so we've got this one here, which is traditional tube type glue. It's a very thick cement. And then we have these ones here, which is your general purpose glues. They're a medium consistency. And then we have our liquid cements here, which are a very easy flowing, very thin cement. Now there's people with different ideas about which particular glues to use. For many, many decades, this is all you could get hold of. Okay, so standard sort of glue. I used it when I was a child. It was pretty much the only glue you could find, and quite often it's the only glue you find in starter sets as well. So you can get them in different sizes. This particular one is the Humbrol one. A lot of different brands available. They generally work the same sort of way. These, as you squeeze them out, they're very thick. They come out, they're generally clear, and they all work the same way. They're all designed to chemically weld the parts together, which means the chemicals which are in there will melt each surface of each part, and then as you join them together, you'll get this permanent bond. With these, they tend to have quite a lot of, I guess, filler in them, and the filler is the part of the glue which acts to bulk it out. So these are quite thick, which is great if you have parts that aren't very well joining. So the chemical will melt the parts that do join, and then any gaps that you might have in between will be filled in with that particular filler component of it. As an advancement from this, so I guess I would have been using these from early 50s, so just after World War II type of thing, and quite common all the way through to the 80s. And then as the 80s came along, you started getting these medium consistency glues. Great thing about these is they have less filler in them, but they still have a little bit in there, so if you don't have perfectly fitting parts, they do still offer that sort of slight gap filling capability as well. So again, you have different brands. These particular two here from GSI, they're actually identical, just different sizes. They tend to call the better value or bigger ones the deluxe version. Actually, there's no difference, so there's quite a bit of confusion on those, but they're the same glue. But then you have the Tamiya ones. Again, these are actually the same glue in different sizes of container. And then you have the needle pointed type. Okay, this is particular Revell one, which is one of the most popular, simply because of the applicator. Glue itself is basically the same. The applicator itself makes it easy to use. From here, one of the later developments is the liquid type. So this is much more solvent involved, and it's a much thinner type of glue. The advantage of this particular glue is when you apply it onto a surface, it has less damaging effect, as in it doesn't mark the surface. Now with the ones with a lot of filler, as you can imagine, because the filler's in there, the filler will remain on the exterior if you accidentally put it into a particular place. With these particular ones, if you paint across the surface, there's less chances of it showing up. It will mark the surface, but with paint, the paint will generally cover it up, no problem. So the usage of these particular solvent glues is slightly different. Now, as I mentioned earlier, with the filler components of these, the great thing is if you do need a slight filling effect, this is where this works really well. But if you've got quite large components, which are very tight fitting, so a lot of the modern kits are very tight fitting, they'll be at a point where you won't have any gaps, unless the earlier ones which did. So with those particular ones, you get a much cleaner finish by using the liquid style. Now, the general use is with the thicker type glues, you apply the glue onto one side and then you press it together to get your bond. With the liquid type ones, you can't do that because by the time you paint it on one side, it would have dried before you get the two parts together. So these need to be applied with a capillary reaction. Now, capillary reaction basically means that you hold your parts together first, apply the glue along the join, and then the glue, because it's so thin, with capillary reaction, will flow by itself. So the advantage of that is the glue should travel by itself along just a join, and it shouldn't go across the top. But as I described earlier, even if it does go across the top, it can be easily covered with paint. Okay, so within this particular section of liquid cements, there are various groupings there as well. So what we have is, we've got the thin, which is generally thinner than the rest, of course, so we regard that as a regular thin. And then you have your extra thin, so these particular ones here. So there's a very slight difference in consistency. And then you have your thin quickset. So the idea here is it's the difference in the amount of solvents which are in the glue itself. These ones have a higher proportion of solvent, meaning they evaporate quicker. Advantage of that is when you apply the glue to your join, it sets much quicker, almost like an instant setting. For these particular ones, it takes a little bit longer for the glue to actually evaporate away, so you do have a slight amount of adjustment capability. And then you have this particular one, which is a limonene base. So with these particular solvents, they're actually quite pungent to the nose because of the strong chemicals in them. For those that are quite sensitive to the smell or to solvents, this particular one, because it's of a citrus base, it has a citrus smell, but it also bonds the plastic as well. Disadvantage of this particular glue is it does take longer to set up. Okay, so what we have here is your regular type. Actually, I've got this in the wrong spot. That should be over here. Move that around. Okay, so we've got our regular thin, and then you got your extra thin. You got your extra thin quickset. You got an in-between one. So this SMS one is actually a quicker setting one than this one, but slower than these. And then you have your citrus-based limonene. Okay, so how do you choose amongst all these particular glues that we have here for building a model? So I think if you're a real traditionalist, and I do get quite a few traditionalists come by, they'll only stick with the tube type cement. And that's the one they've been using for decades on decades, simply because they understand how it works and its characteristics. I've gone away from this one because they tend to string a lot. And what happens is with the strings, it looks a bit like mozzarella cheese. You know, it strings out and it ends up going all over the place. You end up with fingerprints and it's a little bit of a mess. So this is not my preferred. This over here, the liquid type, so medium consistency, I consider this to be the basic glues that you should consider for everyday building. So whether you build one model or you build a lot just for entertainment's sake, this you definitely need in your repertoire. So these will pretty much do any kind of work you need. They glue very well. They have some kind of gap filling capability. And for a majority of jobs, this is what you use. With the liquid cements, these are quite specific. So because of the way you have to use them, you have to join your parts together first and apply the glue. It doesn't work in every aspect. So if you've got very small details like antennas and you want to glue them onto a surface, sometimes it's better to use a slightly thicker version like this. These liquid cements are perfect for very large surfaces. So the best example I can have is the fuselage of a plane. Because you have long fuselages and they're generally in halves, it's very hard to apply glue all the way around and then press it together and then make sure everything lines up. So what you'll do in this case is you'll have your fuselage, you put the two halves together, you tape them together and make sure everything is aligned first, and then you apply the cement between your tape gaps. And what that's going to do is it's going to tack it all together. Now once that's set, you can pull off one section of tape and then apply the glue along the seam, and then continue along until you do the whole fuselage. So the advantage that's going to have is it's going to have less bulk of the glue, so you won't have the filler coming up. You'll have a very clean seam, and you have the ability to be able to line up every single part without anything being out of alignment. Because with large sections, plastic tends to slightly warp, and by doing a small section at a time, you can actually control how to bend back and correct that particular warp. So that's where these are great. Now with your large sections, you may have items which you want to tack quickly. If you particularly want to build quickly, then these fast setting glues are best for that. So with the tape in between holding together your fuselage, if you use these particular glues in between first to tack, you'll be able to remove the tape quicker and then apply the regular glue for strength. These particular ones do need very good surface area joins, because if you imagine a very quick setting, if you've got a slight gap like this and you apply the glue, it's only going to be sticking at the end point like these. So that's another consideration there. Again, with the limone, this is perfect for people that have a sensitivity. So you use it in exactly the same way, only takes much longer to use. So, reiterating, so we've got our tube glue. This is perhaps old technology, which is great for people who are nostalgic about tube glue. Some people like the strings, it brings back memories of childhood. But this is your first choice. You've got the standard type liquid cements, medium consistency. Revell glue, simply because of the needle nose, is the most versatile, easy to use. The other ones use a brush. And then you get into your thin liquid cements. Okay, so the extra thins over here, regular thin. So these are used in a different method. You really need to have your components put together first, and then a drop is applied to the join, and that particular liquid will travel by capillary action and then hold your parts together. So thick, medium, thin, extra thin, quick set, and then citrus based. So that's my summary of the different kinds of plastic model cements available. And with different aspects of a model kit, different consistencies work better than others. So if you can just remember that very small fine parts, the medium consistency is better because it has some sort of filler involved, helps to support the parts. And then as you get into larger parts, first put those together, dry assemble with tape, and then you can apply the thin cements between there. And then you have the choices of various thicknesses, and then the quicker setting, obviously the quicker it is to tack together. So there you go. So there's my basic explainer of the different kinds of plastic cements. I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions, please pop them below the video and I'll get to them as soon as I can. So thank you for watching.